Yo, what is up, guys? It is the man in the can. It's Super P-Man here today with another video. And guys, we're close to hitting 200. We're at 186 at the time of this recording. Hopefully you guys can help me get there by leaving a sub down there. But anyways, let's get into this video. And today I'm going to be talking about trying to fit a timeline for Kenshi. Now, we already have the wiki timeline, but I want to make this timeline kind of more concrete with all the stuff that we've been covering and everything like that. So it's going to be impossible to go over every single faction and stuff like that. So we're going to try to go over like the majority of all that type of stuff of, you know, not like factions and things like that, because we really don't know when some factions came around, some others didn't. So let's start with the First Empire. Now, the First Empire was the most advanced civilization that we know of that ever came to Kenshi. Now, we know they came because they were going to try to colonize this Kenshi planet. At least this is still in theory, that we think that they're going to come and colonize this planet, and they were probably terraforming it too from the satellites in the sky. Now, we never knew when those satellites went up there, but those satellites could be magnetic fields generating a strong enough magnetic field so it doesn't get radiated and it was able to develop life. Now, this is like 10 to 15,000 years ago, so, you know, terraforming is kind of a slow process, but maybe in this case it was sped up because of how maybe good it was, or good technology was and stuff. But we know that it was a space empire that pretty much wanted to do this, and we know that the space empire essentially sent these satellites to Kenshi to create a habitable planet, and then they were going to send people there. Now, for the people that ended up going there, we don't know that much of. We just refer to them as the organics, the first kind of humans to ever come to Kenshi. Now, adaptation always takes a course in human life. We always adapt to our environments. Now, these people were humans, but we don't know what, you know, if there still are species of human or they're a different hybrid species of human because they mastered space travel and all that stuff. Now, you have to take that into consideration. So these organics, we'll just call them organics as humans. So these organics most likely came here for the escapement of the empire, maybe to get out of direct control, like something with the, you know, the first Americans coming and settling in America. Now, we don't know this for sure, but there are evidence that points to it, like creating a workforce of skeletons. Now, I can get that you're trying to exploit all the resources on Kenshi, because Kenshi does look like a rich field area with a lot of iron and copper, and it's used for a lot of things, but there's probably other resources that we can't mine because we're not, you know, tech-wise, we're not there yet. But they also do come into, they also do build behemoths. Now, behemoths are these giant skeletons that are really, really tall. They're pretty much so tall that they can just throw a satellite into orbit, and that's pretty much what they did. Now, there was no reason to build those big machines if you weren't trying to protect yourself. Now, think about that. You're building a big machine to be able to throw stuff into orbit, but that big machine could have also held the empire at bay and wanting direct control. Now, you can think of this as, like, time goes on. You can see it really with the Americans. So if you take the Americans and you see when they first landed to that point, they were under solitary neglect, and that was probably what happened with the organics. They were probably in solitary neglect to the point where they just knew, all they knew was freedom and freedom of choice and all that stuff. And so maybe when the empire tried asserting its control over the first organics, they got mad and had a war over it. Now, this war is what ultimately caused the downfall of the First Empire. Not the war itself, but the consequences of the war. Now, the organics knew how powerful the behemoths were, and if they got into the wrong hands, that they were pretty much screwed. So you can tell with the civil war that happens in the empire that it's not just Kenshi, because if it was just Kenshi, then, you know, things wouldn't have gone so, you know, poorly for the space empire. So we have to assume that any other planets under its control that had the same thing were all under attack. Now, this means that the empire was struggling to hold its control over vast distances, and maybe Kenshi was one of the lucky planets that was so far out of reach that it had the littlest, most effort of the empire, and maybe the actual concrete of the Civil War was fought in some other space battles, and that's what led to the downfall and reset of all the nations. Now, you can tell during wars, there's always times of famine and stuff like that, and that's pretty much what happened. Famine hit, because when a big empire falls or gets into a war that loses, you know, there's pretty much essentially a dark age. Think of the Roman Empire after it fell. There was a huge dark age that lasted almost like close to maybe like 500 years or something like that. Not 500 years, I'm stupid, like close to 1,000 years. But this dark age really resets humanity, and it really limits on what they can do. Now, this is what ends up leading to the death of the first empire, the Great Extinction as everybody calls it, because pretty much there wasn't enough food to feed everybody that was around in the empire, and that's probably one of the things that they didn't realize, that the empire kept everybody fed, it made sure trade and everything happened. So maybe there was a lot larger population on Kenshi that just ended up dying off because, you know, you couldn't feed your population. Now, this is pretty interesting because, you know, you wouldn't expect the famine to reset everybody, but I guess the famine resetted everybody, and I guess the organics knew that this was going to come, and if they knew this was going to come, they could have prepared for it, but they didn't. So they just ended up destroying the behemoths and giving up or giving in. And apparently, the second civilization that I talked about in a previous video ended up, you know, getting reset too, because they weren't fortunate enough to end the war or come to peace terms. Now, this whole entire dark area, we don't know what happened much between that area and between the Second Empire. We don't have enough to fill in the holes, but we can assume that humanity was, or the organics were just trying to rebuild society as they had before. Now here comes around the Second Empire. Now, the Second Empire was led by this man called Catlon. He was a very influential skeleton. He was a really, really, really good skeleton at the start. He had noble intentions, but he started getting corrupt later on because skeletons live for a long time. They live like essentially forever, but they can't reproduce or anything like that. They just have they have to reset themselves and before they go insane and all that goody stuff. And his second in command was Tin Fist. Now, Tin Fist doesn't seem like he's insane. I'm not going to get deep into that, but Tin Fist is the second-hand man. Now, Catlon was originally trying to rebuild the empire for a good sake. Now, there was a time in the Second Empire where everybody was happy and enjoyed it, but then maybe somebody found out about the testing. Somebody found out about the testing. Now, what this means is that if somebody found out about the testing, that pretty much they needed to keep those people quiet, because if you guys don't know, there was genetic testing on humans being done by skeletons. Now, this could have been Catlon's doing in secret, or this could have been somebody else's doing in secret, but they were meant to keep quiet. And I don't know how the whole entire religion of Okran, I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. It's not Orkane, but Orkran. I don't know how that whole entire religion was founded, because first, a lot of it is from the perspective of the Holy Nation. So, you know, it's kind of not like, it's fair to say that it could be delusional and all that goody. So, we don't know how it was created, but I assume that maybe one day somebody was, you know, under one of those satellites that shoot beams, and he probably got hit with the beam or something, and he just ended up, like, you know, splitting off with his demons and stuff like that, and realizing, oh, I only have one shot at life, and, you know, these skeletons are doing bad things. And the skeletons thought by maybe leaving him in that area, maybe that, you know, he would die because of the beams. Now, he ends up making it out alive, and he starts telling people his story, and, you know, people start praising him as a god. Maybe some people tell him to praise himself as a god. So the Holy Nation starts forming underneath the nose of the Second Empire. Now, during this time, the Shek were invented. Now, the Shek are genetically modified humans to become, you know, to kind of be fighters, like a vanguard type of thing. And they're a lot stronger than regular humans. They take about 25 more hit points on all their body parts. And they also have a higher blood rate start too. And they are naturally good fighters. Now, we don't know what caused the horns to show up on them or their skin like that, but we don't really know that much about how they genetically modified them. Now, also at this time, there's probably a rise of Scorchlander population. Now, Scorchlanders are like the opposite of the Shek, because instead of being super loyal and stuff like that, they preferred freedom. They like breaking the rules. They weren't natural fighters. They were natural traders, and they could be really good at crafting. That's pretty much what they were good for. Now, as for some failed experiments. I personally think that skim spiders were a failed experiment or a failed genetic modification that ended up in what you call a mass population of skin spiders that now you can't eradicate because they probably reproduce a lot. But this is where the fall of the Second Empire starts happening, is when the Holy Nation itself starts forming underneath their noses. Now, the Holy Nation, when it first started out, it was just trying to release itself from the enslavement and bad treatment of the skeletons. And, they pretty much rose up and said, hey man, we don't like you, we hate you, we're gonna have a huge war. Huge war, Second Empire falls. The Hive, around this time, the Hive come in from this other, people have just found out that it's another continent. I will talk about that soon, maybe in the next like 2 or 3 videos or something like that, because I have some things I want to talk about it. But they came from a different continent and came onto Kenshi. Now, the thing is that the queen is part skeleton. Now, nobody knows how this happens, but the skeletons were probably going to try to manipulate the Hive to go and fight the humans so they have allies, because skeletons, once they're dead, they're dead. They don't replenish their army. But humans or organics, you can, or we'll just say Greenlanders. Greenlanders, you can just kill them, but they can still replenish their numbers to an extent. Excuse me. But this is where really the fall of the Second Empire starts, because they realize that controlling the Hive is not as easy as they thought, and the Holy Nation is starting to lead crusades against them and starting to spread this propaganda pretty much that skeletons should all die and stuff like that. Like, oh, skeletons this, skeletons that, that type of thing. But to each its own. I think that's how the Second Empire pretty much just crumbled, and Catlon went insane. Now, Tin Fist goes off into hiding, and he's a pretty cool dude, not gonna lie. Sometimes I do imprison him, sometimes I don't, but Catlon is literally crazy. He is so crazy that he pretty much enslaved everybody that is around him, and he kind of just made them thralls, which is enslavement, took out their CPU processor or something like that, and just made them slaves. And when he screams, he can call all these slaves to come and attack you if you try to ever go with them. Now, up to this point, this is where you come in and you have the decisions and pretty much just make something change or make nothing change. But that is pretty much all the timeline lore that you have on Kenshi. Now, I know I didn't get into the factions or anything like that, but just to let you guys know, I might make another video if you guys really, really enjoyed this video and want to know what, like, all the factions and everything like that. I could make a video on that if you guys really want me to. So remember to leave a like, subscribe, send me video suggestions if you guys want me to do that, and peace.